happen on those facilities, and here's what we plan to do next year. That kind of stuff, generally speaking, is in people's hearts and in their heads, the things they like to do and the things that they endeavor to improve over time. So as part of our outreach to the community and residents, I suggested, what community organizations could we talk to, and certainly that represent all age ranges and different kinds of demographics. So at the kickoff meeting, the study committee, of which George is a participant, put together a list and wrote. I'm from Lebanon County myself. I grew up in the Palmyra area. I was born in Tennessee, but it was really just a transplant from my family, my parents who were in college. But I graduated from Palmyra. My brother graduated from Cedar Crest. And I think that gives me a unique perspective in terms of relating to people who live here in Lebanon County. The northern part I don't know quite as well, although I remember canoeing on Memorial Lake with my grandfather and taking the dog out in the canoe, and it was my job to keep the dog from jumping out of the canoe. So that was a particular northern Lebanon memory that I have. And I imagine many of you have lived here for a very long time, perhaps since you were a child. Maybe since you were a young adult just starting a family, or maybe more recently as an adult with an established family or an established business, perhaps. And just sort of free-form answers here. How do you spend your free time today? How do you connect with your family and spend that free time? And how do you spend your free time with friends? And they may be friends of the same age, and there may be more sort of intergenerational kinds of friends. Anybody can tell me what kinds of things you like to do in your free time? And I could pick on Christy because she has free time today, right?
Yeah.
Just today. Because really anything we do in our free time is recreation. It may not be public recreation, but if you like to knit, that's what you like to do in your leisure time. If you like to watch sports, be it a Little League game, a church softball game, or sports on TV, in some way that's your leisure time, and therefore it's kind of recreation. And the Commission isn't going to serve all recreational needs. That's not its purpose. In fact, we want to, in this project, take a look at the mission statement of the Commission and see if we can make that, if it needs to be narrower and more focused, or if there are things that need to be added in, if it needs to be expanded. But how do you spend your free time? A little feedback. Sheila?
I like to dig around at flea markets.
Okay.
And be like an American picker, and then be like an American restoration.
She watches too much TV.
In my case, I like the investigating part, and then the projects of restoration just pile up in the garage.
The trails, though, out in Sotera.
Okay.
The bike trails.
Okay.
Do you golf here?
You golf around. Yeah. Yes. On road.
And who do you do those things with?
My husband who's retired. And friends. I got a lot of friends too.
Our family likes to canoe and go kayaking down in Swati.
Mm-hmm.
There aren't any real. I mean, there's places we can get in and out that are kind of makeshift, but there's certainly not any easily accessible ways of getting in and out of this, unless maybe.
Jonestown's good.
So we used to go down that far. We used to get around Lickdale, and we have to get permission from the campground to get out and stuff.
Okay. So right in there is an idea for perhaps an improvement, maybe some more locations to launch and pull out your canoes. And I should also say that the scope of this project, we certainly recognize that many of the facilities that exist here, whether it be ball fields or canoe launches that exist at the state park, the different municipal parks, they're not under the ownership and management of the Commission, but the Commission's the one who's trying to understand what the community's really interested in having someday. This plan that they end up developing, it's not all going to happen, next year. It's not like there's going to be one big capital budget and all of a sudden the money's going to be there. But it will result in a list of hopefully prioritized kinds of things. Well, geez, really, frankly, what we've been hearing the most about is walking. People like to walk. So then sort of the next question is, are there safe places for people to walk? Are they walking on sidewalks? Are they walking in the street? Do they want to walk on trails in the woods? That's a different kind of walking facility. So the plan could identify the need for having safe places to walk of a certain type, or maybe different types of trails and sidewalks and pathways and so forth. And ultimately, those improvements would need to be made by the folks who own that land, whether it's municipal parkland or I talked with a state park manager last week, and I said, I certainly see a place in this project where we could have our local municipality support improvements to be made at the state park. If there's something people really want to see, and I'm like, can we put that in our plan? Will you not be offended by that? That the municipalities and the commission should advocate for that and support you in trying to get those improvements made. And he said, sure, that would be fine. Don't make it too specific so our hands aren't tied and we don't get blamed if something doesn't happen. But you can certainly advocate for improvements in state parks and your own facilities, or improvements to a parking area if necessary at the state game lands. I haven't interviewed them yet. So we recognize that the improvements would be made by other folks. It wouldn't be made by the commission. However, the commission might be able to help in terms of grant applications to DCNR in order to get some supplemental funding to make those improvements. So, so dialogue between the commission and the folks who own the different properties and facilities, that will be important, and we're trying to reach out to them, conduct interviews, like I said, with Rob and with the state park manager, so that they know where the commission is coming from, and that we're not by any means trying to mandate those improvements. We're trying to have some conversation about what do residents want to have here in terms of recreation. How can we encourage people to be physically active and help their overall health, not require them to do recreation, but end up with sort of the good outcomes that come from recreation, both physical, social connections. And Melanie, that's the reason I asked about whether you knitted by yourself or in groups, because there's a social connection that happens there, and that's important to a sense of belonging in your community, and that's something that can come from recreation, whether you belong to a knitting club, whether you belong to a Little League club, or you belong to a hiking club or a canoe club of sorts as such. But if you have a group of people and there's a sense of commitment to that group's going to stay around for a while, or maybe perhaps you meet on a more limited basis and you make a special request to the library that once a month could you stay until such and such, and make an arrangement for someone to lock the building when you leave. The library itself may close at 8, but if you came in at 7 and you're there, everybody's just locked in until you leave, you could have a conversation about that. I don't know what the policies are, but I can plant that seed for you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
So what I've handed out,
Your book club, sorry. Would you end
what
up?
I've handed out here is we have a survey address. We have a survey open on SurveyMonkey that it's 10 questions long plus your municipality, so it's not very long. But we ask about the kinds of activities you participate in, where you like to do those things, what kind of improvements you might suggest there. For example, if you go hiking or biking on the trails in Swatara State Park, are there any improvements needed? I was there with the state park manager. I know they just made some, but if you have a suggestion, like, gee, we should really have a light.
Could you define community? Are you looking just from input from people that live in the northern tier, or anybody who might come to the northern tier? Are they welcome to participate?
They are welcome to participate too, because there's on the survey there is where we ask what municipality you're from. It says elsewhere in Lebanon County, so that I can see how much input we're getting from other folks. But that is certainly welcome, because of the state parks that are here, they're not in the rest of the county, so they may be coming for particular activities here, and those folks may have suggestions for those parks. Or, I hit the trail in Swatara State Park, but I really travel to such and such. So that is welcome, yes.
Well, for instance, the Swatara watershed.
Because the project is mostly about recreation, but there's a conservation piece to this as well. Sometimes people value simply the scenery of the places that they live.
And the history.
Sure, the history that goes along with that. History can be rolled into a hiking event that talks about the history along this particular old railroad corridor. Where were people going if they were traveling on a train, or where was the freight going that floated down the canal along this route? Those kinds of things. But conservation can also play a role, and there may be, hypothetically, there could be a recommendation that says support agricultural easements or protection of scenic view sheds. If the community wanted, the public wanted the community and perhaps some county funding to say we need to make sure that this landscape doesn't change or changes very slowly but continues to reflect the values that we have for agriculture or forestry or other natural resource things that are really strong here in the northern part of the county. So input on conservation is welcome too. Our questions at the moment are focused on